Hey guys, welcome back. Joe here again from ScaleFreak.com, coming to bring you the next step in the build of the Axial Racing SCX10 2. This thing, so this is an extension to the previous video that got a little long in the tooth. Now we're going to start to mount the links. We're going to mount the suspension, and pretty much the truck's really starting to get buttoned up. There's not a whole ton of parts laying around anymore for me to put on this thing, and I'm starting to run out of screws in a good way. So let's go ahead to the next step. Now, earlier I showed you exactly how to build a link off camera. We went and just finished them. They're all done, and of course the shocks are kind of hanging off to the side over here, which are all going to get done. Now, one thing that I want to make a mention of that Again, I'm in love with this thing. I want to have its babies. But basically, one of the things that I'm going through and noticing is that this is significantly different from the previous setup when it comes to how all of these links are captured. We're not using a screw and a nut and a screw and a nut and a screw and a nut. It's not working like that. Now we're just using plastics that hold the end of the screw, so we don't have to have all these extra things hanging around. Oh my God, I'm so much happier. Okay, aside from that, let's go ahead and get some stuff built on. So really what it's going to come down to is I don't need to show you how every single link's going to go on. I just kind of want to show you how a couple of them are starting to fit in. That's pretty much the important part. So number one, I'm going to start with the back over here. So we are going to go use one of these big bad screws. It's pretty much going to go through here because that's going to connect the top links. Where's my 2 mil? So the thing that's really, really neat about this is the fact that, again, because there is no hex that's going into the back, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, and I'm just going to screw it in. So the holes are small enough that this thing is going to take the entire gigantic screw. This thing should be the correct size, and it is. Just make sure, and then I'm going to start to screw it in. Now, we talked before about how much better, way better, these new links are than the old system, and it's just impressive. So start putting them in just like so. And like I said, it's not like the old system where you had a screw that was long enough that you had to put a hex on the back of it. This thing is really going to button this axle up really, really nice and not have a whole ton of excess hardware hanging off of it. And the thing I'm going to like about it is that with my old system, I always had to have a set of pliers around to get that screw out because there was a nut on the other end. You don't have to do that with this system. It's just a screw, guys. Just one giant screw that's all held in by a lot of plastic. So it's going through 3 separate layers of plastic, so it is not going to back itself out anytime soon. So just like that. Extended screwdriver. This is going to be a hot screw, guys. So when you get to the end, just kind of finish it and nurse it at the end and just give it a snug. Otherwise, you will just melt and strip this plastic. So bang, there's the top links all set up. So ta-da, that's done. Now what we're going to do on the bottom section, again, it does work a little bit differently using a bit of a different screw. Should be this one here, number 1 and number 2 screw. So what's going to be neat about this is going into these cool red things here, and all you have to do with that is, again, this. You do not have to have a nut on the other end of this thing. Just start to lead it in, put the space, or put the link in here, and finish it off. Ta-da! And make sure the screwdriver stays in. And don't stab yourself with it, because that ruins your night. So here we go. Way better system because you're not having to worry about the suspension stuck to the link itself. You're not having to worry about the old Axial system where if you just honk that screw down like crazy, it's just going to flatten everything down and start to create a lot of resistance against the ball. And it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It really kind of centers stuff out. It makes things work on their own. Oh, perfect, there you go. So that's how that's set on there. You don't need to see how the other one goes on. That's pretty simple, right? So ta-da, that's how that works. Now, one thing I do want to mention, when you're going into the front link, you have to remember that the stock setup is actually a 3-link, which is fun, actually. But just remember that when you're doing it, check the instructions to make sure that you put it on the correct side for the 3-link. Just like that. Boom. So make sure it goes on the correct side for the 3-link, because the stock instructions or the stock setup of this truck calls for the Panhard system, because you're running a chassis mounted servo, and you want to make sure you get that right and put that screw in the correct position. So please take care to make sure that that's done. So give me a minute. I'm going to finish off these links. No need for you to watch. With these things all built, it looks like a giant squid now. Now, remember, the front end, right? Remember how I told you before? Tons and tons of driving, steering angle. It just makes contact a little bit, but oh my God, the mechanical stop is almost there. So this thing is still getting so much more. And I'm sure someone in the aftermarket is going to say, hey, if we build one that's just a little bit rounder, you get even more steering. So I would expect to see something like that soon. Now, of course, with the links, right? The 2 bottom links for the front end, the 1 top, because it is a 3-link. Then, of course, you've got what is going to go to the servo, but there's this little doodad here. That's where the Panhard bar is, because remember, we're running a 3-link, so something's got to hold that axle from going from side to side. That's where this bad boy comes in. So I'll show you how that's set up in a second. In the meantime, truck flipped upside down. This bad boy's kind of just all laying all over the friggin' place. But we got to finish getting these things put on. So this is about the time that they actually go onto the axles themselves. Same thing as before. Actually, it's the exact same thing as before, only this time it's going into the axle. So line it up really nice. Make sure the hole is exactly where it's supposed to be. Ta-da. Slip it on. Just like that. And screw that in. Now, always important, when you're starting to put links on, make sure the axle's actually lined up. Because how many times have you built a truck and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, it wasn't in there, and now I got to do that all over again. But, you know, just slap it in there like that. Just make sure it's done correctly. Where's the other one? There it is. And where'd the other screw go? Now, one thing I didn't I shouldn't say I noticed earlier, but when I was looking through the system earlier, I was like, wait a minute, I feel like I'm missing a screw. No, if you look through the instructions, you'll see it actually comes later like it's supposed to. And if you also look at the instructions, it will tell you that I probably should have installed the links onto the axles a significant amount of time ago, but I didn't, because, I mean, I just kind of waited till later. So if you're going by the instructions, which I always recommend that you should, you would have finished the axles about 3 videos ago. But I skipped ahead, and I forgot to tell you then. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not really sorry. But there, so there's that. So ta-da and ta-da, just like that. Now, again, I love how this stuff is set up. I've always been a big fan of how Axial does all their gear. I just think that the setup is unreal. So I got the truck upside down. Let's start with the front. So number one, we're going to get this thing all kind of rigged up. There are multiple places for screws, multiple places that stuff's going to get screwed into, and it gets pretty hectic pretty quickly, which again is, you know, one more reason why we love all this stuff, right? Screws get pretty long, so I got to find these gigantic master screws that are absolutely huge. So there is a number 1, there is a number 2, and then there's going to be this honking big bad boy here, and that is our number 3. So let's see here, get this up here. I know that the bottom links are going to screw into, well, once I get, hold on, and let's put this here. I'll put this over here, and the bottom links are going to screw into there, and the top link, wherever it's hiding, is going to screw into this part. So watch this, right? So we're going to get one of these big honking screws, not the biggest honking screw, but still a big honking screw, and feed it into the bottom of the plate. That plate setup is fairly exactly the same as the previous SCX10, so don't be afraid of that. It's going to go into the same spot. So ta-da, just like that. Second screw, same as the first, just a little bit louder and a little bit, isn't that how that old run goes? A little bit louder, a little bit worse. It's getting really late. I've been filming for hours. So ta-da, it goes in there, just like that. So again, that screw is going to go in. That's going to hold your bottom links. Remember how I told you you got to have that Panhard bar, because right now, look, it moves from side to side. Typically, when you do the 4-link setup, you've got the 2 top links that keep it from really getting any kind of wonky or anything like that. In this case, you don't have that. That's where the Panhard comes in. So now, this flip it to the side. This is a neat system, right? Remember in the old SCX10, you would actually have to mount the top links to a part of the chassis. In this case, they're getting screwed down to the bottom plate. So now all links are making connection to the plate. The bottom links are making connection deep into the plate. The top links are up high on the plate, which is a neater setup, much cleaner. And one of my favorite things, again, that I've mentioned before, you're not using all those extra nuts because one problem that I did run into with which truck was it? I think it was Red Knight, was the orientation of the motor made it so I had to really get goofy, or it's goofy. What I'm looking for is more of imaginative with the mount of my my motor and my links and how they all went in, which was a massive pain in my ass and makes it very difficult to work on, but it works, and I just hope I can not have to ever work on it. There we go. So there is that. Just get that finally screwed in there. And just like that. So now the top and the bottom are connected, but again, it's going side to side. That doesn't work for anybody. So again, that is where the Panhard system comes in. So this last screw is going to get mounted right into here like that. But we're not going to do that yet because if you notice, if I put that in there, I have, let me see if you can see it here, I have no access to put a servo horn on this thing. So that waits a little bit later. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna get this whole thing exactly the same as the front. You don't necessarily need to see it, where I'm gonna do the long links are gonna go to here, and these little links are gonna go into there. So give me 1 second to tap those screws in. All right, so now I've got everything buttoned up on the front, and kind of let me show you how this is going, right? So I did put the servo horn on, and I didn't use the one that came with the Axial kit. I don't like to use plastic servo horns. I used an aluminum servo horn that I had hanging around, and I had to get a bit of a shorter screw because otherwise the geometry was a little different, so I used a different screw. Now you can see here I got the Panhard setup, and the way this is all set up is, remember how I showed you before how the axle would move from side to side? Well, it doesn't do that anymore. That Panhard bar right there is set up to not allow it to wiggle back and forth. So now your servo is all set up to move. Awesome possum, that's phenomenal. And the Panhard bar, that when you steer, it keeps it from jerking the axle back and forth. And oh yeah, I mean, it's super floppy right now, but once I put shocks on this thing, it's gonna make all the difference in the world. Speaking of shocks, let's kind of get that set up. So remember with the last Axial system, it was set up quite significantly different, that both the link and the shock would both be captured in the same position. Not the case anymore. So this is a way better system. You can see on the top of this little red guy here, see right there, that there is a top screw hole. And basically that is to get it through here and pop this bad boy in here. And it's gonna set it all up. So the shock is just on the, the shock is just on the outside of the system, but that's exactly where it should be for this setup at least. And then if you ever have to change the shock or change the fluid or anything like that, it will be much quicker to pull that bad boy off without having to completely dissect pretty much everything on the suspension of the truck and lose a bunch of screws and wonder why your links are kind of screwing off on you. So this is a neater way to do it so that it kind of goes in. It's a little bit more outboard, puts the suspension a little bit further towards the wheels, a little bit more articulation. I love you, Axial, thank you for the setup. So that is how the bottom shock goes in. And then the top, simple enough. I mean, you know how that works, right? Same setup as before. Just here we go. And it's going in like this. So that's it. Oh, here we go. Now, these new shock towers, just for the record, are significantly beefier than the previous version shock towers. So that's going to be really nice. It doesn't move as much. And that's how that works. So nice and easy on there. And give me a minute. You know what? I'm going to take a second. I'm going to get the rest of them screwed on here. Again, you don't need to see how I did that 3 more times. And there we go. Everything is mounted. The links, the suspension. Look how pretty that's looking. And now that this is all mounted up, because I had some questions, how much will this thing actually move? It doesn't move very much. It's got a massive amount of beef on the inside of both of these axles. It moves freely, great articulation. This is a very well-built truck. So that's how that all goes together. So that's the end of that one. Again, this was kind of the pair or the second half of the video that I posted earlier, but that's done now. So the links, the suspension, it's starting to look like a truck now, eh? Like everything's kind of really going together. It seems like the rest of the stuff we'll be doing is just a matter of odds and ends of just finishing up the odd little bits and bytes. So it's coming together beautiful. So guys, thanks for watching this so far. Please watch the whole series. I've got the link to the whole playlist in the information section below. The comment section is for you though. If you've got any questions or anything about the rig you want to know, just post your questions in there. And of course, click on the like, click on the subscribe, and share this throughout the community. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Have a great night.